I'm a freshman in college now, but I came home this past week for a funeral. But let's rewind a little to my senior year of high school. It was during study hall, and I was in the library, hunched over one of the school's aging desktop computers, trying to get through some computer science work. My laptop back at home didn't have JCreator installed, which made these clunky machines my only real option. That's when he sat down. This boy from my class, he took the seat next to me without a word. There were only 2 computers in the library with JCreator installed, so I guess he had no other choice. Still, the moment he sat down, the air shifted slightly, like the atmosphere tensed. He was tall, unusually tall. His skin was pale, almost gray under the flickering fluorescent lights, and his long black hair hung in front of one eye, casting a thin shadow across his face. He wore a torn jean jacket layered over an anti-flag t-shirt, and his boots, massive Doc Martens, thudded heavily when he walked. He didn't speak, not then, not ever. I'd never once heard his voice in class, never seen him smile, never seen him with a friend. He just existed on the edge of everything, a presence you didn't look at for too long. When I sat down beside him, he looked up, slowly, and stared at me like I'd done something unforgivable. His one visible eye locked with mine for a fraction of a second, but it was enough to chill me. Like I'd just stepped somewhere I didn't belong. I looked away, fast, flustered. My heart had ticked up a notch for no good reason. Desperate to look busy, I dug into my backpack, rummaging pointlessly, pretending I was looking for something specific, anything to avoid his gaze. With my head still dipped into my backpack, I heard him chuckle, quietly. And then he mumbled something, too low for me to catch clearly, but just loud enough to freeze me in place. I didn't move. I stayed hunched over, clutching my bag, pretending I hadn't heard. I told myself he was probably just talking to the computer. Coding can be maddening sometimes. Maybe he was just frustrated. Maybe. Trying to shake it off, I straightened up and quickly typed in my login credentials. The tension clung to the air between us, so I forced out some small talk to cut it. "She assigns way too much homework," I said casually, glancing toward him. His eyes didn't budge from the screen, not even a flicker. Then, in a low voice that sent an odd vibration through my chest, he said, "You want the answers, don't you?" I let out a nervous laugh. "No thanks, I won't learn anything that way." Usually, yeah, I would have jumped at the offer, but something about him, that stare, that horrible, soul-piercing stare, I didn't want to see it again. Then came the laugh, that same weird, grating chuckle, but louder this time. Distorted, wrong. It made me flinch. I had to shut my eyes for a second just to keep from reacting. I cringed so hard, my whole body tensed. When I opened them and looked over, he was gone. The chair beside me sat empty, still slightly swaying as if he'd just left seconds before. But there was no sound of boots, no footsteps echoing across the linoleum tiles, just silence. And then I noticed it. He had left his flash drive plugged into the computer. I waited for a while, figuring he'd come back for it. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. Study hall ended at 1, and it was already 12:50. I kept glancing toward the library doors, half expecting him to reappear, but they never opened. He didn't return. So I decided I'd take it with me and return it to him in computer science class tomorrow. I reached over, carefully unplugged it, and slipped it into my bag. Later, when I got home, I tossed the flash drive into the small wooden box I keep above my bed. Honestly, It was kind of cool. A Swiss Army knife-style device with the flash drive folded into the middle. Sturdy, sleek, almost stylish in a weird way. Here's where things started to get weird. After that day in the library, after he vanished without a sound, he never came back to school. Not once. But the thing is, he was already kind of notorious for being absent, always drifting in and out, barely showing up to classes. So for the first month or so, no one really thought much of it. It was just him being him. But then May rolled around. Graduation was coming up fast. Seniors were buzzing about caps and gowns, final exams, summer plans. That strange boy? Still missing. And I'd completely forgotten about the flash drive, his flash drive, tucked away in that little box above my bed. It didn't even cross my mind again until 2 days ago. I had just gotten home and needed a flash drive for a PowerPoint presentation I was putting together for my business class. My own drive was missing, so I remembered. I still had his. I pulled it out of the box. It felt heavier than I remembered. Colder, too. Still, I plugged it into my laptop and let Norton run a full scan on it first. The screen lit up green. No viruses, no threats detected. That gave me the all clear. My plan was simple. Delete all his old junk, wipe it clean, and save my PowerPoint. But, naturally, I got curious. I couldn't help myself. Something about it. It was like the drive was asking to be explored. So, I opened it. The first thing I saw was a folder labeled Computer Science. I clicked it open, and there they were. Every single answer to every single assignment we had ever been given in class. All neatly organized, all right there. I just stared at the screen for a second, caught somewhere between surprise and guilt. Damn, I thought, maybe he left it on purpose. Maybe he knew he wasn't coming back. Maybe he wanted me to find this. A strange chill crept up my spine. Not fear exactly, but something off. The idea that this ghost of a classmate had quietly vanished, leaving behind a trail of perfect answers like some digital breadcrumb. It almost felt like an invitation. I went back into the drive, curiosity pulling me deeper. The second folder was simply labeled Music. Of course, I had to open it. I wanted to see what someone like him listened to. Somehow I expected it to be heavy metal, screamo, maybe industrial noise, something aggressive. But what I found was oddly specific and not at all what I expected. There were only 3 songs. Running on Empty by Jackson Browne, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, and Helter Skelter by the Beatles. That last one gave me pause. The way the titles stacked together felt almost intentional, symbolic even. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it left a strange taste in my mouth, like there was a message in there I wasn't quite grasping. I backed out of the music folder. There was another one, untitled. Inside was a folder labeled AP Literature. It was full of essays, random files, and half-edited documents. It looked like a digital junk drawer, until I noticed one file that stood out. It was named The Best. Just that, lowercase, with a period. I clicked it open. It was a 10-page document, 10 entire pages, and each one was filled line by line with his first and last name. Handwritten, scanned notebook pages, every inch covered in his name over and over again. No titles, no spacing, just name after name, repeating endlessly, like a ritual. I stared at it for a moment, frozen, until the weight of it started sinking in. I backed out. And this is where things started to really get strange. There were pictures. He had taken photographs of the emergency escape plan posters, the ones taped to the inside of every classroom door. Every single one. Room after room. Escape routes, exit maps, all meticulously photographed and saved. Then there was a photo of a lit cigarette burning on the tile floor of the bathroom. No ashtray, just the cigarette mid-burn. Another photo, a pile of coins scattered on the same bathroom floor. Next to it was a yellow Post-it note with the words "Chump Change" written in bold capital letters. I started to feel it then, that cold pressure in my chest. That creeping sensation that something wasn't right, that maybe I had gone too far. But nothing prepared me for the last file. It was a photo of me. I was sitting at my desk in class, reading a book, completely unaware. From the angle, it had to have been taken from across the room, maybe even from behind something. The lighting told me exactly where I was, English class. And here's the thing, he wasn't even in that class, ever. My hands went cold on the trackpad. Below the photo was a text file. Its name was "Rest in Peace 2." I clicked it open. It was empty, just a blank document, no text, no metadata, nothing. I stared at the screen, waiting for something to happen, for the text to appear, for a joke to be revealed. But there was nothing. To this day, I still don't know if it was all some elaborate prank, a twisted inside joke I was never meant to be part of. Or maybe he disappeared because he realized he lost his flash drive and that I had it. Maybe he's still out there. Maybe he's watching me. This story happened a few years back, something that still creeps into my thoughts now and then. It involved me and my friend, let's call her Allie. We're both 15 now, which would have made us around 12 when this happened. Allie and I had been best friends since 2nd grade, practically inseparable. Weekends and free time always spent together. We shared this weird obsession with the paranormal, ghosts, haunted houses, anything creepy. If we walked into a house and a floorboard creaked, we were convinced it was haunted, no question. We took our ghost hunting seriously, like TV shows seriously. We'd creep around dark rooms holding a flip phone, trying to record sounds or voices. Total amateur stuff, but to us, it felt real, like we were right on the edge of discovering something huge. But there was one night that still stands out from all the rest. One night that honestly still haunts me to this day. It was around midnight. We were wired, giggly, restless, totally awake. Typical weekend energy for a couple of 12-year-olds who had just eaten too much sugar and stayed up too late. That's when we decided to do another ghost hunt. This time, we'd investigate my house. Nothing unusual had ever happened there before, but that didn't stop us. We were sure something, anything, had to be lurking if we just looked hard enough. We grabbed the flip phone first. That was our usual tool. Small, scratchy mic, low-res camera, perfect for shaky ghost hunting footage. But this time, we wanted to step things up. So we borrowed my dad's touchscreen phone. It felt like holding a piece of high-tech ghost hunting gear. We had never used it before for something like this. It could record actual video with sound, clearer, brighter, more real. We were convinced it would catch something amazing. It was the first and the last time we ever used that phone. My basement wasn't like most basements. The house I lived in at the time was old, really old. The kind of place that creaked in the winter and smelled like time had soaked into the walls. Everything about it felt out of date, almost frozen in another era. The stairs leading down were narrow and steep, the wooden steps groaning under even the slightest weight. At the bottom, there was a large open room, mostly used for storage. Boxes, old furniture, holiday decorations shoved into corners. Dust hung in the air like fog in the beam of our flashlight. Further in, there was another medium-sized room where the washer and dryer sat humming when in use. That space felt more normal, more lived in. But the room at the very end, the one furthest from the stairs, that was different. It was small, cramped. The walls were old stone, and the air was always cold, no matter the season. We called it the cell, because that's what it reminded us of. Some kind of holding cell, like you'd see in a prison movie. No one ever used it. Not because it was full or dirty, but because no one wanted to be in there. Everyone in my family avoided it. Too creepy, too still. Naturally, that's where me and Allie were headed. We made our way down the basement stairs, excitement pulsing through us. I had the flip phone ready, and she had my dad's touchscreen. We turned both devices on, hit record, and stepped into the dark. We started asking the typical ghost hunting questions, ones we'd seen dozens of times on TV. Is there anybody here? If you're here, give us a sign. What's your name? Our voices echoed faintly against the cold concrete. The red glow of the recording light blinked steadily in the dark. Every little creak, every shift in the air felt important. We strained our ears, waiting for something, anything, to answer back. But nothing did. After a while, we got tired. The anticipation had worn off, and the silence was just silence. So we turned off the devices and headed back upstairs, back to my room. We were buzzing with excitement, not because we thought we'd found something, but because we might have. This was a big deal for us, a real video recording, clear audio. It felt like our first step into becoming actual ghost hunters. We pulled up the footage, sat side by side on the edge of my bed, and started watching. And nothing. No voices, no figures, no flickering lights, no cold spots. Just us, tiptoeing around, whispering to the walls. The disappointment sank in hard. We'd hyped it up so much in our heads that the normalcy of it hit like a letdown. Normally, this would be the part where we'd make something up, pretend we heard a footstep that totally wasn't one of ours, just to feel like the night wasn't a total bust. But not this time. This time, we were too excited, too hopeful, too invested in the real footage. We didn't even want to lie to ourselves. We wanted this to be real. And that's why what happened next still terrifies me. We couldn't sleep. The buzz from the ghost hunt hadn't worn off, even with the footage turning up empty. Our minds were racing, too full of adrenaline and what-ifs to drift off. So we grabbed a couple of board games and played quietly in my room, trying to shake off the disappointment and wear ourselves out. After a while, Allie looked at me and said what we were both already thinking. "Wanna watch it again?" I nodded. Maybe we missed something the first time. Maybe we were too hyped up to catch it. We didn't want to admit we were hoping for a scare, but we were. So we played the footage again. And oh boy, we missed something. The moment the video started playing, we both felt it. That energy. A strange heaviness settled in the room. A slow, sinking pressure that we hadn't noticed before. The first time we were too excited to feel it, but now it crept in like a cold fog, wrapping around us as the images flickered on the screen. Something was wrong with it. We kept watching anyway, leaning in, listening harder. That's when we heard it. Footsteps, not ours. Faint but distinct, off rhythm, coming from somewhere just outside the camera's view, not echoing like ours. Closer, heavier, like they belonged to someone or something else down there with us. We stared at each other, frozen, and then it happened. The moment that still replays in my head every time I close my eyes. The frame had shifted, and the camera was on Allie. She was talking, asking one of the usual questions. Just behind her, in the shadowed part of the basement, something moved. A figure. It looked almost human, but not quite. Its body was distorted, limbs just slightly too long, joints bent at odd angles, the skin blurred like static. It didn't move like a person. It just stood there, watching. Its eyes, God, those eyes. They were pure white, glowing faintly in the darkness, and somehow they felt like they were watching us. Not just Allie, not just through the screen, but through the video, like they knew we were watching now, as if the eyes were still aware, still connected. That was it. We shut the video off instantly. Neither of us spoke for a while. We were just sitting there, stunned, breathing hard, trying to convince ourselves we hadn't seen what we'd seen. My dad was asleep upstairs. It was too early to wake him, and even if we did, what would we say? That a blurry, white-eyed thing showed up behind Allie on a basement recording? We both knew no one would believe us. So we made a decision. We didn't tell anyone. That night became our secret. But we never went into that basement again. Not once. The space that once felt like a playground for our imagination had turned into something darker. Something that felt like it had watched us back. Even now, years later, we still talk about it. Sometimes we even dream about it. I still don't know if it was all in our heads, some twisted trick of the light or our overactive imaginations, or if something else had been down there with us. All I know is I'm never going into that basement again. Not ever. This all happened during Halloween of 2014. My name's Max, and I'm from a small town in Findlay, Ohio. Back then, I went to high school out in the county, about 10 minutes from where I lived, at a place called Van Buren High School. This all happened during Halloween of 2014. My name's Max, and I'm from a small town in Findlay, Ohio. Back then, I went to high school out in the county, about 10 minutes from where I lived, at a place called Van Buren High School. Van Buren was a quiet little village, peaceful really. Most of the people were kind, decent folks, the kind that waved when they passed you on the street. But like anywhere, if you looked hard enough, you could find darkness tucked into the corners. And around here, everyone knew where that darkness gathered. The Van Buren State Park. The park had a certain reputation, a murmur that hung in the air whenever someone mentioned it. It wasn't just about the usual teenage rumors or spooky campfire stories. No, this place had real history, dark history. There had been reports of assaults, rapes even, enough to stain the place with a quiet kind of dread. Still, I'd been there countless times with my friends and classmates, and nothing bad ever happened to us. So I never thought much of the stories. They always felt like things that happened to other people, in other parts of town, at other times. To me, the park was just a place of memories. I remember biking the trails with friends, laughing as we raced through the trees. I remember setting off works bombs in the woods, the echo of our shouts bouncing off the trees as we scattered. I remember lazy afternoons spent fishing by the lake, the sun warm on our backs. It felt like our place, a backdrop to youth, freedom, and fun. But that Halloween, that night, changed how I saw everything. Fast forward to my senior year at Van Buren on Halloween Day. That's when my friend Ian and I saw the other side of Van Buren State Park, the one people whispered about. That past summer, I had enlisted in the Army National Guard, so staying in shape was a big deal to me. I needed to train, stay active, keep my body ready. That afternoon, I hit up my best friend, Ian, and asked if he wanted to run the trails with me after school. He was all for it. He liked to work out too whenever he got the chance. It was around 4 p.m. when I pulled into one of the gravel parking lots inside the park. The sun was still out, casting a soft golden hue over the trees, the kind that made everything look peaceful, almost deceptively so. I parked and waited for Ian. That's when I saw it. An old silver car parked across from me, engine idling low. Behind the wheel sat a man, bald, gaunt. Something about him looked off. His face was the kind you remember for the wrong reasons, unnaturally pale, with eyes that seemed just a little too wide. His mouth was stretched in a strange way that made it hard to tell if it was a grin or a grimace. But the worst part? He was staring at me, unblinking, intense. That kind of stare that makes your skin crawl, like he was sizing me up, like he was hungry. I tried to shake it off, reminding myself that creeps do hang around parks sometimes, especially places like this one with a bad rep. But this guy, he felt different. I glanced back at him. He was still staring. I locked eyes with him for a second, and he nodded at me, slow, deliberate, like he was trying to say hello, but it wasn't friendly. It was cold, predatory. I gave a polite, uneasy nod in return, but quickly looked away, pretending to mess with my phone. My pulse had already picked up. But even without looking directly at him, I could feel it. He was still watching me. I stole another glance from the corner of my eye, still staring. I'd had enough. I threw the car into reverse and peeled out of the lot, gravel spitting under my tires. My gut was churning. I didn't even check to see if Ian had arrived. I just needed to get out of there. But as I pulled onto the road and glanced up at my rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. He was following me. The old silver car was right behind me. No hesitation, no casual turning in the opposite direction, just tailing me. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal. I didn't even think. I just gunned it straight to the high school. My mind raced as fast as my engine, running through every possible scenario. What if he cornered me? What if I couldn't lose him? I sped into the high school parking lot, weaving through the empty rows until I was sure he hadn't made the turn behind me. Gone. Finally, I exhaled. Shaking, I grabbed my phone and called Ian. I told him where I was and that he might have to deal with that creep alone, if he was even still at the park. Then my stomach twisted. I got a text from Ian. Just one word. Here. So I made my way back to the park. My gut was still twisted in knots, but Ian was already there, and I didn't want to leave him hanging, especially after that creepy encounter. The moment I pulled in, I spotted his car, and 2 spaces away, the silver car. He was still there, still in the driver's seat, still staring. That same sick, unmoving glare locked right onto us, like he hadn't looked away since I left. The way his head slowly turned, following my car as I pulled in, it sent a chill right through my core. I gave Ian a quick nod and motioned for him to follow me. Without saying a word, he pulled out behind me, and we drove together to a different parking lot, deeper inside the park. One less exposed, more isolated. We thought we were safe. We really did. After parking, we got out and headed down a small hill that led to the trails. The afternoon light had started to dim, casting long shadows between the trees. The forest rustled around us, peaceful, but also quiet in that unnerving kind of way, like the calm before something. We weren't running just yet, just checking the path out, seeing how muddy it was, how clear the terrain looked. I never liked running with anything in my pockets, so I figured I'd leave my keys and phone in the car before we started. But before we could even start our run, something stopped us in our tracks. That damn silver car. It was back, circling the lot. We'd only gone a few steps down the hill, but from our position in the trees, we could still see the lot clearly. He, on the other hand, couldn't see us. We were tucked just low enough into the slope, partly shielded by tree trunks and brush. But we could see him. He drove slowly, methodically, creeping around the lot like he was hunting, looking for us. Ian and I dropped into a crouch behind some bushes. Neither of us said a word. We didn't have to. We were both thinking the same thing. He was searching. And he didn't just accidentally come back. He was following us. We waited, still, silent. Eventually, he circled once more, and then disappeared. The car was gone, the lot quiet. We waited another minute or two just to be sure. Then we climbed back up the hill, moving slowly, checking every direction. Still nothing. Gone. A part of me said to get back in the car and leave. But the other part, the stubborn part, maybe the stupid part, didn't want to let him ruin our plans. So we decided to go ahead with the run anyway. But I wasn't going in there unarmed. I picked up a rock, heavy enough to do damage, but not too big to carry. It wasn't much, but it gave me a shred of peace of mind. If we ran into that creep, or worse, in the woods, I wasn't going to be defenseless. And deep down, I had this sinking feeling. We weren't done with him yet. I'll probably never know what that man's intentions were, but considering the reputation of that place and the disturbing, almost predatory look he gave me, I know they couldn't have been good. Something about him, it still unsettles me. That cold, deliberate stare, the way he just watched without moving, like he had all the time in the world. Now, years later, I've graduated from Van Buren. I'm an infantryman in the Army National Guard, and I'm currently attending Bowling Green State University. Life has moved on, mostly, but the memory hasn't. In my room, right next to my bed, there's a big storage closet. But it's not what you'd picture when you hear the word closet. It doesn't have a regular door, no knob, no hinges. It's just a large, square-shaped panel that fits into the wall. You have to grab it by the edges and lift it out like a lid. It's always been kind of weird, but I'd lived with it for years, so I never thought much of it. But if we rewind to a few years ago, back when I was 19, that's when things started to get strange. I remember the first night it happened. I'd gone to bed like normal, nothing unusual at all. But when I woke up the next morning, I noticed the door. This square slab of wood that usually stayed wedged tight into the wall was leaning against the side of my bed, just sitting there. Now, this wasn't the strangest thing ever. It had come loose a couple of times before. After all, it wasn't secured in any real way. No latch, no hinges, nothing holding it in but the friction of the wall edges. Still, it gave me a weird feeling. I didn't think too much of it at the time. I just pushed the panel back into place and went about my morning routine, getting ready for school. But the next night, something changed. I woke up around 4 a.m., that strange, dead silent hour where the whole house feels like it's holding its breath. I wasn't sure what woke me up at first, but I had this creeping feeling that something had moved. I sat up, squinting into the dark, and there it was again, the door, leaning on the wooden edge of my bed again. That's when I started to feel uneasy. This time, I noticed the chipped corners on the wall where the panel was supposed to fit. It looked like the plaster or drywall around the edges was starting to wear down, like it couldn't hold the door as snugly as it used to. Maybe it was just old. Maybe the structure was starting to loosen. That's what I told myself, anyway. I left it the way it was for the night and fixed it again the next morning. But the night after that, things took a turn. I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for what felt like 2 straight hours, my sheets twisted around my legs, my mind refusing to shut off. Every creak in the house sounded louder in the quiet, heavier. The air in the room felt thicker than usual, like it was pressing in around me. Then, out of nowhere, I heard it. A loud, heavy thump. I knew exactly what it was before I even opened my eyes all the way. I turned my head, barely needing the light. Even in the dark, I could make out the shape. The closet door had fallen open again. This time, I didn't even get up. I just laid there, staring at it. Not scared, not angry, just exhausted, frustrated, done. In that moment, I mentally decided to stop fighting it. From now on, I'd just leave it open. What harm could it really do? That's when I heard it. The faintest sound, the soft, papery crinkle of a plastic bag shifting from inside the open closet. My heart skipped. No, skied, shot straight into my throat and lodged there. I froze, every nerve in my body snapping to full alert. There was no draft, no breeze, no fan. The room was still, completely still. That sound didn't just happen. I hesitated for a second, too afraid to move, but my trembling fingers eventually reached for the light switch. Click. Warm yellow light flooded the room, and that's when my worst fear came true. Inside the closet, half hidden in the shadows, just past the boxes and bags, was someone. A man, curled up, barely visible, but unmistakably there. His face tilted just enough to catch the light, his eyes locked onto me, watching me from inside the wall. For the briefest half second after the lights came on, he didn't move. Then he jerked his head down, shifting quickly, as if he thought I hadn't seen him, as if he could still hide. My body refused to move. I couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. And then the scream ripped out of me before I even realized it. "Dad!" I screamed so loud I felt my voice crack in my throat. My chest was vibrating from the force of it. It took maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like hours before my dad burst into the room. His eyes went straight to mine, then followed the direction of my shaking finger. I pointed. The closet. He didn't ask questions. He walked straight to it. Only then did I finally move. I scrambled out of bed and stood behind him, every muscle still trembling. My dad crouched, ducked inside the closet, moving the boxes and bags around. He searched it thoroughly, and he came back out empty. Nothing. No one. He looked at me, clearly trying to keep calm, and told me it must have been my imagination, a dream, a trick of the light. He tried to laugh it off, and part of me wanted to believe him. But the rest of me, the part that felt the stare, that saw the shape crouched in the dark, that part knew. Still, I was too shaken to argue. There was no way I was sleeping in that room again, not that night. I grabbed a blanket and lay down on the floor in my parents' room. They tried to comfort me, but I couldn't close my eyes. I couldn't relax. And then, just when I was beginning to settle, just starting to convince myself that maybe I had imagined it, I heard something. The sound of my bedroom door slowly creaking open. From down the hallway. Then, footsteps. Fast, heavy, running. Someone sprinting down the stairs, and then, slam. The front door slammed shut with a violent crash that shook the house. We all heard it. My parents jolted awake. That was the moment they believed me. We all ran, out into the hall, down the stairs. We opened the front door, but whoever it was had already vanished into the night. Gone. Later, when we fully searched the closet, we found what we hadn't noticed before. An empty storage container tucked in the back, just big enough for someone to crawl into. And that's exactly where he had been hiding.